Hi, everyone. Welcome to Lunch Poems. Thank you for being here. My name is Camille Santana Considine. I'm thrilled to be this year's graduate student coordinator for the series, and it's a pleasure to welcome Jessica Fisher to today's reading. If you could please just take a moment to silence your phone before we get started. I'd also like to thank everyone who makes Lunch Poems possible, Dr. and Mrs. Tom Colby, the library, particularly Amber and the student workers, the English department and the dean's office, and now Jeffrey G. O'Brien, the director of Lunch Poems, will introduce Jessica.
Thank you, Camille, and welcome back, Jess, because Jessica Fisher is a former Ph.D. student in the department, so it's always moving to have someone come back in the full glory of another side of their practice. Welcome, Doctor. Jessica Fisher's 3 books of poetry are titled Frail-Craft, Inmost, and in 2024, Daywork. All 3 in different ways are compound words. Frail and craft, 2 nouns connected by a hyphen, in and most, a preposition and an adverb that have migrated together through time to form a new word. And day and work, of course, again, 2 nouns, but now without the hyphen. Their seams right up against each other. The first book and the most recent also have terms of labor in their titles, craft and work. I mention all this to say that Fisher names her books, and to some extent their commitment, to foreground poetic effort, the effort of composition, of combining, and of showing the seams where things come together. Daywork is very much about that seam and limit of poetic work, taking as its title a translation of the Italian term giornata, indicating how much painting a painter of frescoes could accomplish in a day. The title poem ends on the line, quote, "will make you see what is wrought through me." And that is what this poet does, offer poetry as in part work that shows itself as work, as lines and stanzas, accomplished in the fugitive parts of the quotidian, before or after parenting and teaching and all the other inescapable bids on our time. You could say that giornata measure art in terms of practical life, and that thus the segments of painting completed in a day also measure and express that living body, which is fitting here in that Fisher is also a poet of the mundane quotidian, as comfortable considering the tasks around raising children as she is with performing the ekphrastic labors necessary to engage a Helen Frankenthaler painting or Ghirlandaio's 14th century Slaughter of the Innocents, and a poet of that other kind of seam running through that quotidian, the contact zone, where our attachments to others form and are maintained or severed, maintained and then severed. Thinking the seam where persons meet is day work too, and it shows up in the book in a long letter to a poet-scholar friend, and in 4 consecutive and stunning elegies for the poet Hilary Gravendike, the last of which has among its final lines, "and then I lost her again, and the conversation's still going." Beyond that sweet paradox of loss and the ongoing, the line's power comes from the 2 ands that start the lines, a conjunction that marks the seam between things, whose emphasis here insists on the ongoing as much as still going does. Please join me in welcoming this poet of the music where edges meet, Jessica Fisher.
Thank you. It's really so wonderful to be back. You all maybe already know how lucky you are to have people like Jeffrey. What a beautiful introduction. This room is full of beloveds and also faces new to me, and I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for coming out this absolutely beautiful day. I left the toggling winter, spring, freeze and thaw of the Northeast, and came to the magnolias blooming. So good timing on my part. You did such a beautiful job introducing the book's conceit, the background of its title, Daywork, that I don't have to preface it really very much at all. So I'll just begin by saying that, I was thinking about how we take in to the mind and the heart the problem and the possibilities of care for the future. And as I was thinking about how one would train oneself to do that, I thought, well, the farther you can see into the intimacy of the past, maybe that would be a sort of way of training the art and mind. And the book was begun when I was living in Rome. And so in that place, of course, everywhere you turn is an ever deepening past. This first poem touches upon that. I remember seeing in a local park, there was a sort of, in Rome, a sort of little gated area. And if you got the key and descended, you descended into a columbarium. And there was, little bones of the past in this park where we would play with our kids, sort of always there beneath the ground. So you'll hear a little bit of that in this first poem. It's called Shadow Play. Autumn, light. Under what sun were you born? Did you grow? Under what king, what tyrant? What window, what door? The 4 horsemen, the 7 sisters at rest. Whether 1,000 years, 5,000 is a long time. Still, a stone held in the hand will warm. The same goes for bone. Who fed you? A hand extending the spoon. What fed you? Music, art, or light? Was there an empty room, shadows cast upon the floor, the boards liquid with sunshine? And was that how you imagined the soul? Open, ready, very still, even if the day itself was windy? Or was it for you like the wind, tempestuous, infiltrative, lifting the fallen leaves? Did you think about it at all? Many lights cast many shadows so that the hand on the paper is reflected time and again, the knuckles like the mountains, one range after the next, and each a fainter version of the same color, so that our sense of the far away is brought close, the brush dipped again into the water, a little less paint for the next stroke. The path curving away to the right around the hillock into the copse. A little gate breaks the view, beyond the beyond given as a stripe of blue. This is how I came to know you, as a smudge or trace, thumbprint on the pot shard, residue in the flask. Among the overarching conceits of this book, I think has to do with the way that the poem, lyric poetry in particular, makes a kind of I-you relationship across unfathomable distances. Those distances can be temporal, they can be imaginative, they can involve, of course, death and loss of other kinds. And so, as Jeffrey said, as I was sitting here, it's a book that thinks deeply about the form of elegy. And I'll get to those poems as it goes, but there's a kind of intimacy between a present absence and an absent presence in poetry that I find quite moving. What surprised me about this book was, and about the world that we live in, is how it keeps forcing us to think about care against the backdrop of just unthinkable violence. And that's the harder part to get into poetry. This next poem, I'm not sure that I could explain very well. It's called Hinge, but it comes out of thinking about a lesson I had as a child, a really wonderful lesson in 7th grade where a historian and an English teacher were working together with the kids. And the historian had a friend who was digging in England, some castle site. And I guess he had a lot of Roman coins, and he sent a coin for each kid. They came as like dirty little nuggets. And our job as 7th graders was to clean the coin, date it, find out something about its currency. And so this poem surprised me, but it has that memory as its central beginning point. Hinge. When I was a child, I was given a coin caked in dirt. Tell me, she said, from whence came this coin and whom did it serve, its mint or its king? Served in a cake, or for a cake was it traded? So I was ushered into the corrosive questions, each one hinged as if there might be some movement, a door shut then opened, and behind the knob, the agent of change. But either the screws came loose and the door fell askew, the tongue flapping free, or the hinge had rusted shut and I was dumbfounded. In either case, it was I who had broken what I should have opened, as if a bull in a shop or led to the slaughter. Come along, pretty heifer, said the priest who held me, and when I tried to speak, I heard the bellowing. Who pities the beast, its eyes wide and wild, that braces for death and hopes to be changed? 3 wishes she gave me, and along with them the stories of those who had squandered their wishes by wishing. Scattered to the winds, and the 4th wind left hungry. Still it sweeps past my door, crying, mine, mine. This next poem is the title poem, and about it you need to know just that it came from an occasion of looking at a fresco in Italy with the man who had been responsible for restoring the room. So we were in the Vatican in a room painted by Raphael, and way up high on scaffolding. And I'd been studying the daywork, the giornata, the seams between the days, the parts painted, but with a great master, of course, the traces erased. And I couldn't see with my eyes open the seam. Daywork. Close your eyes, he said, and took my hand. There was something he wanted to show me, the seam called the giornata, raised like a scar, running through the fresco, which marks where one day's work ended, the next began. I wanted to trace that limit, to know where the painter had found an edge and stopped, the scaffolding descended and the brushes washed, the figure left to dry in the dark room, his one eye painted open that will never see the rearing horse he rides. You know the posture, you've leaned back in the saddle, the beast beneath, you pulled at its reins and told it to quit. It can't quit, the bit in the mouth and no sight in its eyes, seen and yet blind. This was the drama he wanted to show, don't you think? Or think of the women holding the room up, the stone-like caryatids with their gray, empty eyes. Have you ever felt like that, like you were to keep very still while the others move around you? In birth, I remember the midwife took my reins. Is that right? She held me here and there and reached inside. She was touching my baby. I had nothing to do but let it happen. I let it happen, so well trained, really. A vehicle, you ride me or drive me. Oh, but if you are the head, I am the neck. I will turn you to my advantage, will make you see what is wrought through me. This book took a very, very long time to finish. And part of it was just that it was a book about the unraveling of experience. And but it's very sweet to read these poems that are, that remember having newborns. Mine are not newborns any longer. And that remember also, friends who are past. So the next couple poems Jeffrey mentioned are for Hilary Gravendike. And She was a grad student here and just a wonderful poet, and I'll try not to cry. How's that? Hive. I always mess these up. Hive. In their darkened cells, locked in with wax, the larval bodies hardening. Are they scared in there, the children want to know? Does it hurt to change? In the dark room, in the sealed cell. How am I to know? When I think of their hive, I think of her lungs, honeycombed by illness. That was the word she used for it long ago. Since in a net I seek to hold the wind, Wyatt wrote, meaning he could not. That last quote is from Sir Thomas Wyatt from the great sonnet, Whoso Lists to Hunt. Speedwell. The sun goes down, we say, but that's not right. Still, night falls on the tragedy's final act. The first star like a pinprick in tin. I was looking for a metaphor for someone who knows the way. On the shelf, a book titled The Sight of Death. On the shelf, a little bottle to keep age away. How can you be alive, you growths of spring, Whitman wonders, fed by death in the poem my friend loves. The field itself, some kind of bed. For what, sleep? She wrote to say that this spring may be her last. I lay on the damp earth, in the grass interwoven with the dozens of plants I'd thought nameless, the little white daisy-like flowers and the tendrils of the tiny striated blue ones, which have, as it happens, not only the one name Speedwell, but many more besides, cat's eye, bird's eye, farewell and goodbye. You were to pin a posy of it onto the beloved's coat before a journey, the boat leaving for what distant shore. The passengers reluctant to go, as is the poem that knows it has come to an end and refuses like a child stalling before bed, not tired yet or scared of the dark. Every death takes a body. It's hard to know what it leaves. Already it has stitched its signature into her chest, the scars that chart her illness like lines on a map that show where the ship has sailed, struck rock, found the ocean too deep to anchor, and so drifted windless, the sea like the earth, teeming with the dead. And from those graves, these flowers, which every spring have bloomed, discreet as the beloved. And if we are to believe Whitman, and why not, of the beloved as well, hair or tongue or the unseeing eyes that were the color of chestnuts and are no more. Why not lie in the grass, in the sun, taking the flowers as proof that nothing dies? This is what the poem's after all, a figure, no matter how thin, that might make these reversals in matter seem like a switch flipped on and off and on. A child playing day and night, dark and light. A single life like that, or not at all. If in the bag the phone rings and goes unanswered, will she feel like that, calling from far away? I was thinking as I worked on this book about forms of art that are collaborative and that elaborate friendship, and the necessary sort of communities of the present, as well as, of course, as these communities of the past that I've been talking about so far. And I was interested in the form of the prose poem, and in these sort of letter forms. I thought maybe I would just read one. It's a little bit longer, but it was written March 6, 2020. you maybe remember that day. It was the day when something was coming down the pike, but we didn't quite know what COVID would become. And I think the references will be clear to most of you. Maybe people still remember the movie Clueless. Maybe not, who knows? March 2020, March 6, 2020. It already seems a long time ago since we stood in the rubble where the Phil juts into the bay. Someday in the future, I will think back to us then, how we saw where sea touched earth, salt, sand, a way of framing things. I know that. Ever since the first class in college, where we cut a rectangular hole out of a sheet of cardboard, and she said, to be an artist is to select. She said to impose the frame on what we saw so that it might become art, which means that what I was taught is that art excludes. I miss you. I see that through the frame. But I am torn now writing this between things. A book about the past lies open beside me, marking one writer's fascination with lives seen only through the shadows. Beneath this document are other windows open, one to the article on the spreading virus and one to the Decameron, which I have been meaning to read, and one to the grant application that would give me time to write. I am like a dragonfly flitting, like a fly landing here and there. I miss you. I am not at a precipice, nowhere near the sea, but grief is a watery thing, not mine, thank God, at the moment, though still it meets the ground and undermines the shoreline. My father just now on the phone, saying that after his friend had died, his heart hurt. I didn't know in which way he meant. My heart hurt, he said, missing her. And the doctor I know and who knows me said he felt that way when his wife died, only it was in fact his heart that was hurt. But she was only a friend, my father says. The doctor said he should have a stress test, only they aren't really very reliable. They can say there is a problem when there is not one, and they can say there is no problem when there is one. And so the doctor who recommended a stress test said, only if it still hurts when you've been walking on an incline. My father prefers the neighborhoods, which are flat and meandering because they are built along a cliff, and therefore the edge they encounter cannot be subsumed to a grid. He likes to come to the view. But because he needs to know why his heart hurts, whether from illness or grief, he says he will walk the canyon or certain streets in the neighborhood that head uphill. He will not come to see us because his heart might be fragile now or might be in the future, and at his age, well, he doesn't take it for granted anymore. And I thought then of you, the way your heart hurt, the speed at which it felt to be beating, and how when they hooked you up to see what it was, they found it was just what it is to be alive now. There is the stumbling sound of a hurry now as the girls, my daughter and her friends, rush downstairs. They are fascinated with murder. Jughead dead, but not dead. He faked his own demise so the preppies wouldn't kill him is basically how it goes. And when they are taught consent, they tell me, laughing as I show them how to peel garlic, they are taught to order pizza. Are you hungry? And how do you like it? Which means that their love will be in language from the beginning, will be about knowing. I didn't know how to speak when I first was touched. It was electric. I was a current, something like that. Thinking this, but they descend, want the couch where I am sitting, writing you. The oven timer has been beeping a long time, but I don't want to give them the couch, don't want to go turn off the timer. I want to remember that I was like a wire once, conductive, mute, desire surged through me. Want to be that wire. What are you doing, they ask. And I say, I'm trying to write everything. Iris has squeezed in beside Sylvie, then Mira and Aaron on the couch. On the love seat are Phoebe and Grace, looking a little left out. It does not say RSVP on the Statue of Liberty. They are watching Clueless. I saw it with Esther or with Laura when it was just out, before I had become a conduit, when we thought the future would be a screen and would remember what you had in your closet. Laura, where are they now? Laura would be an asset to any team, the website assures, but Esther is lost to me, though I remember everything about her, her middle and last names, her Aunt Kasha and her fake British accent, and each long afternoon we spent in her rambling house, watching Inspector Gadget or flipping through porn in her closet. She wanted everything, had to choose. It's cool to know what's going on in the world, the brother says in the film, so I turn back to the paper. The only choice is to wait for death, one headline reads, along roadsides and in olive groves. Now the car lights bend around the driveway's curve and Dylan is home from the basketball game in the town beyond the neighboring town. He is ravenous, a warrior returned from the field. When he has gorged himself and the bones are left scattered about his plate, he turns to what he must become, Macduff to some Macbeth in the fourth grade play. That great bond which makes crow to wing. Meanwhile, someone has matched the CDC guidelines on how to wash your hands to Lady Macbeth's out, out. After living in this beautiful world and in Rome, I moved to Western Massachusetts and I teach there now. And one of the great happenings in our little town every year is that the saw-whet owls come in their migratory pattern through our area. And they're so small, like this. And each year the scientists put a net into the gully where they will pass. And in the gully, they play a recording over and over again of the saw-whet's mating call, so that they'll come into the gully, get trapped in the net, and then you go out as a volunteer with the scientists at night and take them and weigh them. And magically, you sort of take a light, spread the wing, and they read how old the saw-whet is by the UV light on the wing. As they age, it becomes less reflectively luminous. So that's something that arises later in this poem that you'll need to know. I promise we didn't hurt the saw-whet. In fact, it nipped my son's face. So night song. You'll never know what became of me in the dark, how my body opened to what or to whom. There the moon shone with the sun's reflected light, and the stars, hidden by day, blinked their shy hellos. The long days of summer, with its great foliage, its flocks and herds, had erased the desire to be a self alone. Sometimes on the bus, I felt like a stowaway in other lives, looking into the soul of each passenger. How, you ask, given that the soul, if it exists, cannot be seen, is like the bird hidden in the bush, the air you breathe, you take it in nevertheless. I studied their hands, the laborers headed home, kids on their way out for the night. Beneath the skin, the riverways that lead to the heart. I caught their eyes, held them there a while. There was no one I could not love. When the wind clattered through the oak trees and the last milkweed seeds clung to the wire screen and the crickets sang their wild song at nightfall, I thought everything was saying goodbye, that I should listen more closely. I wanted to throw the window open to that cold, take in whatever was left outside. The leaves of the aspen, already so few, though they are not lonely, and in the ravine a net stretched wide to catch the saw-whet owls in their migration. There in the moonlight I saw one shining, lured to the snare by its own call played back. Later, under black light, I felt the rapid heart beating in my hands, spread a wing to tell its age, the dun feathers fluorescing the color of sunrise or sunset, the breast soft as milkweed tufts. Weighed and banded and then let go, It flew back into its anonymous life. It had survived capture, was ready to hunt. The night was dark as the future and very cold. It drove us inside, but something stayed with us of that strange kind. Their eyes like citrine, their few ounces nonetheless weighed enough to hold a heart. I'll read just one last one from this book and then a final poem that's new. This one is called Sunset Corner. The title is taken from a beautiful Helen Frankenthaler color field painting. And in some ways, the poem describes both that painting and a landscape. So I think that's all you need to know about that. It borrows the line, crooks and fools in power, the phrase from Michael Palmer. Unfortunately, then as now, that seems to be our condition. Sunset Corner. Rust spreads, there is a seam, green coming through again. A single line makes the horizon, past which we cannot see. Instead, we watched the surface where waves spread, clouds casting their shadows, a silver stretch where wind riffled the still water. Against that, what thought? No thought, the movement of not thinking. Slurry of sand falling through fingers onto the fortress the child builds close to the break. Bits of cobalt and bottle green glass jeweling the ochre expanse, the towers rising and falling, and above what substance, air as the voice is an air, in and out of the bodies it moves, into the crooks and fools in power, the songbirds and sycophants, children running ahead, and the mind borne forth that way, to no end. That poem describes my son and one of my best friends who's a sculptor, just hours they would spend on the beach making drip sandcastles. And I realized, that when I play with my kids, I sort of have an idea of its boundedness. And my friend Amy just, in the way that people who make art with more material things than words do, she will hold the play so long. So it was a pleasure. But whenever I think of my son in that way, he reminds me so much of my brother. This last poem, a new poem, is for him. It doesn't have a title. I don't know if it will have one. And thank you so much. Wanted sugar, wanted salt. Slaked my thirst on the tongue's own blood, neat like a vein in the rock. You were a faraway thought, star I hoped to see streaking through the sky. Wither, brother. To see it would be to see it burn, you told me long ago. We lay out in the dark on the mountain porch, waiting. The constellations fixed and fictional, their light, the light of the past. So much you knew about the world, how it holds on to forms long gone, curl of ammonite in the stone, the petrified wood you dug for me from the creek. Shape of the body's absence is the shape of you now for me, though you're alive somewhere, still my coeval. The wind through trees, the storm bringing rain. Small of your back in what weather? Thanks so much.
Thank you. I still have infiltrative from the first poem, like humming around my head. For those of you who want to continue reading Jessica's work, we have Patrick with Pegasus selling copies over here, get your copy signed. If you'd like to sign up for our mailing list, we have a sign-up sheet by the door, and all of our previous readings, including this one, will be uploaded to our YouTube. For the rest of the spring semester, we have only 2 more readings. We have Jeffrey Davis on April 3rd, and then the Megan Fernandez reading has been rescheduled to May 1st. And as always, all of the details can be found on our website, lunchpoems.berkeley.edu. Thank you for coming.